Again, we're going to continue in this chapter, focus a little bit more detail about learning styles, learning strategies, and processes, okay, which you have already reviewed, but we're going to maybe tackle them with a bit of detail in this chapter. So the first presentation is going to be done by Rahma, then Sumia, then Naima, and then the last part is by Omar Taqidi. So Rahma, if you don't mind, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you? Okay, our presentation today is entitled by Learning Styles and Strategies, which is prepared by Sumia, Naima, Omar, and me. This is the outline of my part. The first thing is I'm going to give definitions of styles, then and strategies, then field independence, dependence, and left and right brain functioning. First of all, we're going to see what is a process, what is a style, and what is a strategy. Every individual approaches the problem or learns a set of facts or organizes a combination of feelings from a unique perspective. In learning second language, there are variations in learning styles that differ across individuals and in strategies employed by individuals to attack particular problems in particular contexts and various processes. In other words, that every individual have his own style of learning, have his own strategies which he uses in order to acquire a second language. So everyone is unique. Why?
Can you explain the first point? Every individual approaches, etc., and then you explain again the second point. Explain them individually.
Okay, every individual approaches the problem or learns a set of facts or organizes a combination of feeling from a unique perspective. It means, for example, if we face a problem, okay, each one of us, everyone has his own way to solve that problem, okay, and his own way, his point of view, he sees things around him. And in learning second language, there are variations in learning styles that differ across individuals. We have different learning styles, which we have already seen. For example, you find the auditory people, the visual people, the musical people, and in strategies. Okay, for example, if we take study skills, if every one of us have his own way of study. For example, of taking notes, of summarizing, of revising. So everyone is unique, even in the study skills.
So the first one, we're talking about feelings and the perspective from which the learner approaches whatever.
Yeah.
And then the other one,
it's about learning.
That there are strategies, individual strategies for that, because there are unique individual feelings and and perspectives. So on the basis of that, you have also individual distinct processes or strategies for learning.
And process, style, and strategy are the main terms that are used in the literature on second language acquisition. And it's important to define these terms in order to clarify the difference between them. First one, the process. Okay, all human beings engage in certain universal processes. They make, for example, stimulus-response connections. They all engage in association, meaningful, and rote storage in transfer, generalization, and interference. And those processes we have already seen in the previous chapter with Zakaria. So these processes which learners, go through in order to acquire a second language. Everyone has some degree of attitude for learning a second language that may be described by specific verbal learning process. If we take, for example, if we take writing is a process. Yeah. Okay, so it take pre-writing, it take writing, then it's pre-writing, brainstorming, outlining, then drafting. So everything we acquire in the classroom is a kind of process.
So if you just focus on this, you have mentioned, you are mentioning there a number of processes
Yes.
related to learning
Yes.
or language. You have there
Stimulus response
actions,
and association,
meaningful
alert storage transfer.
generalization. We have talked about all this.
Yes,
These are
previous
examples of
processes.
processes
Yes.
related to learning. Okay, and language.
Now style. Style is a term that refers to consistent and enduring tendencies or preferences within an individual. When we say tendencies, it's the way that people behave. Each one of us behave in a certain way. Okay, and preferences. Each one has his preference. For example, he likes something and he dislikes other things. So each individual has his own style. Styles are those general characteristics of intellectual functioning that pertain to you as an individual and differentiate you from someone else. And those styles vary across individuals.
These are tendencies,
and preferences
within an individual. How to do that, okay? And we will see later, we talk about
okay.
concrete examples. Okay.
What can I do? Okay. Now strategies. Strategies are specific methods of approaching a problem or a task, modes of operation for achieving a particular end, plan designed for controlling and manipulating certain information. So strategies is the way, for example, you solve a problem, okay, or is the way that, for example, you perform a task or you do an assignment. Okay, so each one have his own way and his own strategy to perform a task or an activity. Second language acquisition are specific actions and behaviors, steps or techniques used by students to enhance their learning. And here, the role of the teacher is to help students to be aware of their styles in order to improve them, okay? And this is what we have seen with the Prophet Naima, metacognition. Now we're going to see learning styles. Learning styles, what does this mean first? Are cognitive, affective, and psychological traits that are stable indicators of how learners perceive, interact with, and respond to the learning environment. When we say cognitive, it's something that's related to cognition, okay, to the understanding. And we say affective, it's related to the feeling and the emotions.
Which means that we don't choose a certain learning style.
You don't choose.
No.
These are
Depend the context, for example. Yes. And depend the context. For example, the context requires you to be affective, emotions, and sometimes you have to be cognitive. Yes, yeah.
As a teacher. Okay? Now, let me summarize this. Every individual, like among us, has got his own, okay, styles. Here we are talking about cognitive, affective, and psychological traits. You come with that, okay? You are endowed with that. It's a gift. You are that kind of person. Those cognitive, affective, psychological traits. Okay? And we're going to see later on what are these different styles, learning styles. So the learners, they come to you that way. So for you, we're going to see later on, for you as a teacher, and maybe that's what I just said now, for you as a teacher, you have to adapt your materials and techniques and processes to different types of learners you have, learning styles you have in your class setting. Yeah. Yeah, innate. Yeah, that's what I'm telling you now. You come endowed with that. Endowed is given, okay? Innate, you know what it means innate. You are gifted. You are that way. Like you are born with one hand instead of two hands. Okay? Can you explain that again? I'm telling you that these cognitive, affective learning styles, when you are born the very first day, they are there in you. Yes. Okay? And we're going to see these examples of that. And then you can develop and then change, okay? But they are part of you. You can have some people who are visual, etc. So it's innate, something innate in you. Okay? And you can't change it 100%. Okay? But you can improve, modify it. But majority, you have something, and minority, you have something else. Okay? Okay, so when you are bored, you are that way. Now you can see this in children. Different types of children, okay? Yeah.
Yes, and they can contribute significantly to the construction of unified theory of second language acquisition. If are aware of these learning styles, okay, to are aware to contribute to constructive theory and to understand how individuals learn and how acquire a second language. Learning style mediates between emotion and cognition. For example, a reflexive style, we are going to see with Sumia, a reflexive style grows out of reflexive personality, and impulsive style arises out of an impulsive emotional state. What is a reflexive person? Who is a reflexive person? We have the reflexive and the impulsive.
Here we are talking about intuition and...
Yes? Okay, the reflexive is the person who behaves. Yes, he think before behaving. It's not like the impulsive one. Yeah. And people's style are determined by the way they react to their environment. And we are going to see this more with Sumia. Now, the first type of learning style is field independence versus field dependence. The first one is field independence. Okay, first, I'm going to ask you, have you ever played a game of hidden objects?
No.
Hidden objects?
Yes.
Yes. You know what is hidden object game? Is when, for example, you take a place and he asks you to find some objects. Yeah.
No.
So you have learning style.
Yeah.
So you have, yes, you have this something.
Yes, you find that some people find those objects very easily at one glance, okay? And sometimes you find that people are very, very slow to find just one object and one item. People who are finding those objects very easily, they tend to have a field-independent style. Field-independent style is the ability to perceive a particular relevant item in a field of distracting items. You may have many distractive items, but you can find and you can recognize a specific and a particular item within this field.
So when you have people recognizing this very quickly, it means that they are this kind of...
Yes, field independent.
And this is something that come with that, okay? They are born with it, okay? Yes.
A field-independent style enables the person to distinguish parts from the whole. He can see the parts from the whole. To concentrate on something or to analyze separate variable without the contamination of neighboring variable. He is not disturbed by the whole thing. He is just concerned. He is just focusing on details. Yes, on details.
He likes to learn step by step.
Yeah, it's not on general. Yeah. Okay, unlike field-independent style, the field-dependent style perceives the whole picture, the large view, the general configuration of a problem or idea or event. Okay, so dependence is different in dependence. He can see the whole thing. He cannot focus on the details. It is clear that both field independence and field dependence are necessary for most of the cognitive and affective problems people face. Because sometimes people, when you face a problem, sometimes it is preferable to look at the things on the whole, and sometimes it's preferable to look things at details.
And when we say that people are maybe field dependent, it doesn't mean that one excludes the other.
No, yes.
But you have people who have more of this
Yes,
and
yeah.
less the other.
Dominance.
Yes, I did.
Can this mean that for the independent, they want more use
Safa.
and they need more to
Yes, so you just make that fit into the learning or teaching technique. So we will have to look at those details.
Yes. The literature on field independence has shown that field independence increased as a child mature to adulthood. So children are characterized to be field dependent. They just focus on details, okay? But people as they grow up and become adults, okay, they become field independent. Cross-culturally, the extent of the development of field dependent style as children mature is a factor of the type of society and home in which the child is reared. Okay, here in cross-culture, you find that people who are, for example, living in farms and villages tend to be feel dependent, okay? More than people who live, for example, in industrial cities, in competitive cities, you find them that they are felt independent. People who are feel independent tend to be more independent, competitive, and self-confident. And people who are feel dependent tend to be more socialized, to derive their self-identity from people around them, and they are usually more empathetic and perceptive of the feeling and thought of others. So feel independence, they are independent. It's not dependents who are dependent on others, who are around them. Okay, we can see that the first one is intrapersonal, and the second one is interpersonal.
Just focus on these details.
No?
Just focus on these details. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes, Nadia?
Yes, no.
Okay.
It's not because they apply, I mean,
Because the second one is more socialized than the first one. Yes?
you were talking about extroversion and
Yes, yes. Yes. Yeah.
So just treat things as they are. Okay? So look at that. So when we just to understand more what we mean by feel independent, so they are more independent in terms of personality, in terms of behavior, when they behave, they look like they are more independent. Okay? They don't depend on others. Okay? Competitive, does it need to be explained? Self-confident. Now, if you look at the characteristics of the other, feel dependent,
Socialized.
they are more sociable,
From people around them.
derive their self-identity from they have these communicative skills, they are better, okay, and they like it when they are communicating with others, okay. But opposition to the others, they are independent. So when you say independent, they don't need anything from the outside to feel like self-esteem and self-respect, etc. They are independent. But for the other, it is dependent. So you have to depend on something outside. What is this something outside? So it is the fact that they need to be sociable, they need to speak, they need to be in groups. In short, they are extroverts, okay? So, on the basis of that, they gain their self-esteem and their self-respect and self-ecstasy. So, derive their self-identity from people around them, and they are usually more empathic, so they have a degree of emotion. And we're going to see later on in relation to brain, right and left brain. So, we ask people who are this determines their degree of their emotions and how much they use emotions. Okay, so these people, they have a higher degree of use of feelings. Okay, so when they are socializing, so they are dependent. Okay, so they take into consideration the feelings of the others as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, yeah. So that's it. Yeah.
Can you also say, for example, that these self-independent learners are more reflective than self-dependent ones? Because they pay attention to
So it's yes.
more details.
Details, yes.
Yeah, it has to do something. There's some relation between that. This sort of reflection has to do with feel independent, and this reflection with feel dependent. Because they are independent, they are competitive, they are self-confident, and this tends to go with introverts.
And feel dependent.
And usually you know that these people are introverts and we use more reflection. Everything goes inside rather than looking outside.
Yes.
Okay? So you can notice it. From your experience with family members and friends, you can notice that there are people, whatever goes in their mind goes out. If they have something in mind, it goes out. A good movie, that's not a good guy, that's not a good lady. She's wearing but for others, everything goes inside, okay? Everything goes inside. And rarely you can see them communicating their feelings. And you can notice this among you. Okay? You can notice this among you. Okay? And I guess like Eunice, for example, okay? Are you with us? Okay. Are you introvert or extrovert now? So he's the kind of person who is sociable, use some feeling, take accountability of the higher, etc. And whatever has in mind is open, etc. But then there are others among you, okay, who are the opposite. And this changes by know? For example, I give you not to bring you about one smart. Okay, so I'm talking about. Like personally speaking, I used to be very introvert. Okay? And shy, timid, everything goes outside, inside, and you know. But by the age, by the maturity, by the need of you want to establish your career, your image in the community, and so on. So things change. Okay, things change. Okay, it doesn't mean that you are, fixed all forever. If you want to, if you don't want to, you will be that way forever. Okay, so. I think you understand now what we're talking about. So things are a bit related to each other, okay? We want to talk about attraction, emotions, extrovert, introvert, just socialize, independent. Well, there are plenty of charts in your book that summarize all of this, okay? So, yes, that's one.
Okay, how does all this relate to second language learning? We have here two conflicts hypotheses have emerged concerning field independent and field dependent. We could conclude that field independent is closely related to classroom learning that involves analysis, attention to details, and mastering of focus activities. So field independent learners tend to have this kind of activities which focus on details and analytical. The second hypothesis proposed that field-dependent style associated with empathy, social outreach, and perception of other people. So here learners here, for example, field-dependent are more enjoying when they have, for example, teamwork or group working, for example. Yes.
Very personal to classroom management, group work, pair work, individual work. Okay. So the first.
Yes, but little empirical evidence have been gathered to support it because of the absence of true tests of field dependence. Because unlike field dependence cannot be tested. The communicative skills of learners, unlike the field independence.
Okay, good. This is very useful. We need to have a look at this carefully. Okay, so we have a number of features in there in relation to relationship between field independence and the classroom. And the learning style, and the learning management, etc. So field independence learners, they fit more into classroom learning that involves analysis attention to details, and mastering focus on activities. And here, in relation to classroom management, they fit more in individual work.
Yeah.
Okay? But doesn't mean that you're going to stick them there all the time. Okay? So they need to change other types of classroom management techniques. While the other one, field-dependent style, has got a feeling of empathy, okay, empathy, social outreach, and perception of other people. So which means that they are more fixed into group
working,
okay, and group pair and group work, okay. They don't need to hide to learn, okay, by opposition to the first. Good.
Whereas the standard test of field independence, this is the test by which the field independence tested, the group embedded figure test, requires subjects to discern small geometric shapes embedded in large geometric design. This is how field independence styles is tested. Field independence and field dependence are both important. The two hypotheses deal with two different kinds of language learning styles. It means that learners, the same individual, can have both, but one is dominant than the other. Field independent dependence is variable within one person, depending upon the context of learning. Individuals learner can vary the utilization of field independence or field dependence. In second language learning, it might be incorrect to assume that learners should be either field independent or field dependent, but they tend to use a particular style in a particular context. It depends on the context.
It doesn't mean that one
Yeah.
you have both of them, but the degree can vary. But then the teacher should make a combination of different techniques to suit these different.
Yeah. So the teacher should understand the preferred style of each learner and help him or her to invoke the appropriate style for the context. Now we go to left and right brain dominance. As the child's brain, and we have seen it with Khadija, yes. As the child brain matures, various functions
Child brain matures.
matures, yeah, various functions became lateralized to the left or right hemisphere of the brain. We all know that brain have left hemisphere and the right hemisphere.
I think there is another one.
Where? For Moroccan people, maybe.
I think there is another one.
Yes,
There
there is
is
another
another one.
Which?
It is another
Yeah,
What?
Yes.
In the heart?
But what is in the brain?
So,
Yes, it's still one there.
where?
Yes.
It's not, it has to do with something else. That's what maybe number 4. Okay? So we can say that there is one, left, right, and then there's this third one which is concrete. All of these are concrete. And then you can add this one which is abstract, has to do with the heart. Individual intuitions. Other intuitions. It's part of the brain. Anyway, so I was referring to this why it's this comment because we're talking that we have one. Sometimes when something is taken for granted, you don't need to say it. You understand that? It's so much taken for granted. So, but what we have to focus on here
It's the functions of
the functions become lateralized. This is very useful technical words there. When we grow from childhood and adulthood, etc., various functions, okay, become lateralized either to the left or
to the right.
brain hemisphere, okay? And we're going to see what we mean by these types of functions and where they are lateralized. Okay, good.
The left hemisphere is associated with logical, analytical thought with mathematical and linear processing of information. So the left is the logical one, the analytical one. The right one perceives and remembers visual, tactile, and auditory images, and is more efficient in processing holistic, integrative, and emotional information. So the right is for emotion, we can say it's for emotion, and the left is for cognition and logic and analysis. And you can take your book, page 125, please.
Take your book, please. Take your book. 125. That was a very nice talking there. Take your time, Rahman. Now the chart is adapted or table adapted from Torrens 1980, which describes the types of functions we have and where we are lateralized, either in the left brain or dominance. And we will talk about dominance, okay? Or right brain dominance. Yes, please.
Yes, so in this table, okay, we have the function of left brain hemisphere, and we have the right hemisphere of the brain. So we have the intellect, for example, we have for the left brain hemisphere, we have the intellectual, and for the right one, we have intuitive. The left remembers name, and the right remembers faces.
And please, I want you to tell at the end which part you belong more. Okay? I want you to tell us, I'm including myself, I want to tell you as well about myself where I belong more. It doesn't mean that you belong to one than the other, but you belong more to some
dominance.
part.
Yeah.
To me, it's really yes.
The left hemisphere responds to verbal instruction and explanation, and the right one responds to demonstrated, illustrated, or symbolic instruction. The left hemisphere experiments systematically and with control, while the right experiments randomly and with less restraint. The left makes objective judgments, but the right makes subjective judgments. The left one planned and structured, and the right is flowed and spontaneous. The left prefers established certain information, and the right one prefers elusive and certain information. The left hemisphere analytic reader, and the right one is synthesizing reader. The left hemisphere relies on language in thinking and remembering, and the right is relies on images in thinking and remembering. The left hemisphere prefers talking and writing, and the right one prefers drawing and manipulating objects. The left one prefers multiple choice tests, and the right prefers open-ended questions. The left control feeling, and the right more free with feeling. The left not good at interpreting body language, and the right good at interpreting body language. The left hemisphere rarely use metaphors, and the right frequently use metaphors. The left favors logical problem solving, and the right favor intuitive problem solving.
Good. Now, what we're going to do to make this really interesting, so we're going to have 3 groups, okay? What do you prefer, 3 groups of 2 or 3? Okay, 3 better, 3 better. Okay? And then you discuss together, okay? You will talk about yourself to your classmates, okay? What are the things that you use more, okay? And then one is going to report about the other at the end. Okay, so we take some time to do this. Go through the list first together, or maybe, and then divide into groups of 3. Maybe you can do there. So you say, and you understand, you are going to report the main activities of your classmates. Okay. Maybe you can have one from here, one from here, one from here. And so on. to start with dominance. Okay? Okay, to have an idea. Not the detail, but just to have an idea. And to see that you understand these different types of. So, we're going to some people raising hands here. Yeah, it's the left brain for dominance. Who? You or all of us? Yeah, like 11. Okay. So you have one of the left brain dominance. Intellectual. Yeah. Which ones go for you in your right?
Like for example, for example, we remember faces more than names. We also remember images and idioms more than language and idioms. So, but the dominance is
Those two levels. You are more intellectual. Okay. Yes. Good. Yes, this is an example. Anybody else? Yeah.
Just for the maybe actually comes to the weight she said that she's very good at remembering faces. She usually judges objectively. So if she scientifically assesses the others, then she also favors translating the way of and then for C, Agnes and are also in favor of yes, interestingly, has the ability
Okay, good. Somebody else? Yes.
Okay, so for evident art, we think that there are left brain, not left brain options. But for me, I think I would right brain options. Just because I can't
You have the number?
names at all and you can't understand feelings. However, there is some logic and it's
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah, of course. You have everything, right? Everything is in you. Everything is on all of us. It's a question of dominance. Some people, when we say that remembering names, it doesn't mean that you don't remember people or faces or places or no, you remember. You have tendency to remember more names. Personally, I remember more faces and places rather than remembering names. Okay, so that's. I have to repeat that again and again to have some connection, to use some memory techniques. You know, one of the memory techniques that I have to use here is association. Okay, so yeah, that's it. So good. That's the purpose of this little activity, just to understand more about these characteristics and how they are partitioned into left brain dominance or right brain dominance. Bear in mind that one doesn't mean the exclusion of the other. It's a question of dominance. Okay? Yeah, Rahma. What about you, Rahma? Nahma. Can you tell us about Naima?
She used both.
She's equal. Equality, like Muhammad Ahmed. Equality.
Yes, and Yunus is right, and me too right hemisphere.
You're right.
Yes, right.
And he right.
Right.
And,
And Naima both.
In between.
Special case. Yeah.
Like something to do research. Okay. Yeah, right. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. This is something interesting, I say here, some equality, you know. Okay. But how far is this true? The fact, because you are contradicting the research. Okay, so there are new data that we have to investigate. Next point. Yeah.
Stevik at 90.
Which one do you think is better?
There is nothing something better.
This is better.
They complement each other.
Yeah.
In fact.
Yeah, because if you look at these characteristics, maybe the question of judgments, and the question of judgments I prefer makes objective
Yes.
judgment.
Yeah, it's better.
Rather than makes
Subjective.
judgment.
I think it's very difficult to be individual.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not go into those details. So, in relation to your question, and then there are, and this has to do with the fact of emotions. Okay? Because when we are talking about making subjective judgments, it means the involvement of emotions, and the people who can't control emotions, they are these kind of people.
Like women. Like
There
women
are
are
others,
subjective then.
okay, left brain people, dominant, okay, people, that they tend to control more their feelings, therefore when they control more their feelings, they tend to be more objective into the making the judgments. Okay? Yes, continue please.
Stevik 1982 conclude that left brain dominant second language are better at producing separate words, dealing with abstraction, classification, labeling, and recognition. Whereas right brain dominant learners appear to deal better with whole image, with emotional reactions and artistic expressions. In other words, learners with right brain dominance are characterized as being spatially oriented, creative, intuitive, and emotional, whereas those with left brain dominance are more verbal, analytical, and objective. The separate hemispheres of the brain don't function independently. They operate together as a team. They complement each other. For example, the right hemisphere may recognize the face of a person, while the left associates a name with the face. So they complement each other here. The key point here is that all students are different. Having different learning styles, and the teacher should be aware of these differences in order to help students to raise their awareness of their styles and their strengths and weaknesses.
Good. So you have to learn about these characteristics from each type of dominance, so that you understand better your students and learners, and then you tend to provide things, diversify your techniques and strategies and materials to fit in all these domains. Okay?
Okay, thank you. This is all about my part. Now,
Thank you very much.
I give the floor.